Welcome back to the Warrior Servant Leader podcast. We're so glad to have you join us today. We have a fascinating guest, Reverend Dr. B. Keith Haney, a seasoned pastor, author, and advocate for unity and transformation within the church with over 30 years of ministry experience. In a world increasingly divided by race, culture, and ideology, Reverend Dr. Keith Haney stands as a beacon of hope, healing, and leadership. His 30 years of experience in church leadership, ministry outreach, and organizational transformation lends Dr. Haney to being a unique blend of pastoral wisdom, strategic insight, and heartfelt storytelling in every conversation he has. And I expect nothing less today. We're going to have a great conversation. He's the host of the acclaimed podcast, Becoming Bridge Builders, where he interviews transformational leaders who are making a profound impact on God's kingdom. Dr. Haney is also the author of several impactful works, including One Nation Under God, Healing Racial Divides in America, which is a Bible study that guides communities through the process of reconciliation and unity. He also has out Guided by Grace, a narrative to lead organizational change. It's his newest release, which uses storytelling to help churches and organizations navigate resistance and embrace renewal. Dr. Haney, can I just call you Keith?
Please do.
Okay. Keith, man, it is so great to have you. I know we've had difficulty jiving our calendars and technical issues previously. It is great to have you here, and we are just going to dive in and have a great conversation, I think, about a topic that some people are afraid to have, cringe to have, or in many instances are so myopic and narrow-minded that it doesn't produce anything productive. So, with that in mind, I know you've had multi-ethnic and urban experiences in your ministry, professional ministry, and you're now in Fort Dodge, Iowa?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
which has got to be a kind of a big change, even though it, and I don't know if this is an insult or if I'm going to push some buttons, but it has a historical reputation of being called Little Chicago.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, and I mean, even Paul Harvey, who many of our listeners have no idea who Paul Harvey was back in the day, he even did a show about Fort Dodge and its moniker nickname of being Little Chicago. Kind of with that background and your diversity and experiences, what are the biggest obstacles you have encountered in helping people build bridges in a world, or you don't even have to think globally world, just in their own communities, however big those are or however small they are? What are some of the biggest obstacles you've encountered in getting people to that place of building bridges?
Maybe it's helpful to kind of go back and talk about how I got here, because I think it's an important part of the story and an
Yep.
important understanding of how I approach racial reconciliation versus maybe some other people. So I grew up in Louisiana, born and raised in the Deep South. Um, you could imagine what it was like in the 60s. I was born in the 60s, middle 60s. Went to a all-white high school, elementary school, all Lutheran high school. I mean, Lutheran elementary school. And what was amazing to me as I look back on that experience is the people in that school treated me like I was just like one of them. It wasn't, and I was the only black kid in the school most of the time.
Mm.
And it wasn't like, oh, he's a black kid or he's not one of us, but they embraced me, they welcomed me. So I had to learn. I tell people this is kind of funny. I had to learn to be a cultural translator early on in life, because I would go to school with white kids all day long, and our teachers wouldn't let us talk Southern, so we had to learn how to talk proper English. We couldn't use our Southern drawls and
Yeah.
all that. My teachers are from the Midwest, so they made us talk the proper English. Then I'd go home to my community and I couldn't talk the way I talked at school because I was going out to a black community. So I had to like switch up and put on my other hat when I was back in my community. So the way I wrote my Bible study was, let me translate for you where, because I think most racial tension in America is a lack of communication. One group hears one thing, another group hears another thing, and they're talking past each other, as we say, whistling past the graveyard. And so what I did in my Bible study was, here's what black people hear when white people say this, and they mean this. Here's what black people mean when they say this, or they say this and you hear that. And so I tried to like translate culture for people. I think if you really want to be effective at speaking in a divided world, you have to remain curious. You have to want to understand the people that you're trying to reach. You have to understand their culture. You have to understand their common pain. I think what's so divisive in America is we don't acknowledge other people's pain. And we minimize it because the pain makes us uncomfortable. So like if you listen to any show, you'll hear it. I just heard somebody talking about the new term that I hear coming out now is foundational Black Americans. And you may have heard that term. And what it is it's Black Americans saying, look, we were here. We're the slavery. I came out of the slavery generation. We are the foundational, the ones who built this country. That's what they're kind of saying. So we're the foundational people that built this country. We're not the immigrants. They want to distinguish themselves from the immigrants who are here, or from any other person of color who's here, by saying we're the foundational Black people. And what that means is, don't ignore our experiences and don't ignore our pain. Our pain is a unique pain that we don't share with any other group that comes across. We don't share with the Somalians who come across here. We don't share with the Haitians who come across here. We have a unique story, a unique background that separates us from other people. When people hear someone say that, they're like, oh, we don't want to get in that. Can we just move beyond that? That was 200 years ago. Let's just live in the present. When you say that, you minimize the fact that people are still dealing with generational trauma. And so you ignore that by dismissing it. Much like when I hear white people say, we're so sick of talking about race. We're sick of being accused of being racist. When Black people go, yeah, but you earn that. You earn that moniker. You wear that. You're ignoring the trauma that white people are experiencing by being called racist for the last 10 years. There's a pain there. There's a trauma there. And if you ignore the fact that, yeah, those people are fatigued by having been called and labeled things that may not apply to them, have nothing to do with them, may have something to do with their distant relatives, but you attach that to them and you ignore their pain, what happens is we never address each other's trauma. We just want to move past the trauma. And I think if we don't recognize that everybody's bringing trauma to the party, we're not really in a position to understand how we can heal it.
Oh, man, I'm taking a ton of notes. You see me looking down. I'm like, I'm not ignoring you. It's like I got so many notes, and I said this is going to be an exciting conversation. Is your insights? We could take it, and so that people could go, okay, let's. I don't get it. Because this is something that happened 200 years ago. Mm-hmm. Okay. I would then like to have people go, okay, let's take it out of the black and white racial context. And you know what? I was born in Ireland, so I'm a full-blooded Irish. It took 23andMe, and because my one daughter goes, oh, Dad, we got all this. I go, you didn't get that from me. I am 100% Irish. And that other stuff, the Iberian Peninsula or whatever, that's your mom's side. And so I refused to take the test. So she bought me a kit and my wife a kit for Christmas one year. It's like, okay, now she spent money. Now I have to do it. So I spit in this thing and send it off. Literally, it came back 100% Celtic, and they even in the report narrowed it down correctly to the county that I'm from,
Wow.
County Donegal in the Northwest. 100%, not even 0.01% anything else. And so take it out of the black and white, take it out of the slavery conversation, and the same principles, the same. It's not the same kind of pain, but it's the principles of trauma applied to the Irish.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and and it's like and they minimize it by they still call it the Troubles. It was like, okay, it's a little bit more than that when you're being starved to death by another nation. But again, that's hundreds of years ago, and you can talk to Irish who go, they'll meet an Englishman or something and like spit on the ground. It's like, what is your problem? Or the animosity that can be there because of that. What you're referring to as unresolved trauma. Now, take it even further. Let's completely take it out of that arena, whether it's ethnicity or cultural or whatever. It's not unlike PTSD that our military, our first responders, and other folks are victims of violent crime. That's one of the major stepping stones that they have to use and cross to help resolve their past experience to get beyond the trouble, to get beyond the trauma, to then go through the process of healing. And so the analogy I'm trying to make is this isn't what you're writing about and what you're sharing with organizations, not just racial church related stuff, is that principle of I think, and give me some more insight on this, that leadership is kind of the foundation. The process is reconciliation. The end goal or mission is forgiveness and unity. So how do you get people to set aside those biases, whatever they may be, so that the process can never start until you have done some self-reflection? So what do you do? How do you do that?
I teach people to learn to listen to the stories.
Okay.
You have to be willing to sit in the pain. You just talked about the Irish. When you mentioned that to me, if I'm not willing to sit in that pain with an Irishman who still feels that, then I'm not really ready to listen to you and learn anything else about you. I have to be willing to sit in that pain. It's uncomfortable. And I think that's the hard part, is to really be able to be compassionate means I'm willing to sit in that pain with you. I'm willing to hear your story. I'm willing to hear the background. I'm willing to hear that you're a unique part of your story. And I'm not going to sit there and tell you that, well, your story is not typical or it's not normal. See, no one else has lived your story except for you.
Yeah.
We sometimes start thinking, well, even among Black people, someone will say, well, I grew up in a neighborhood where everybody loved me. Well, that's great. That's not every Black person's experience. Some Black people grew up in neighborhoods where they weren't loved and they weren't valued, they weren't cherished. There was a lot of hurdles they had to overcome. So we can't assume that everybody starts in the same place and everybody's story and their history is the same. You have to understand and honor that person's history. Once you let people sit in that for a while and tell you their story, then they're willing to trust you a little bit more and go, okay, let me hear your story.
Yeah.
I think what happened is people haven't felt heard.
And I think you just put in a great perspective one of John Maxwell's famous, quotes or principles is, and John, I trained direct. I mean, I met him and trained under him in 2013, and he was saying this back then to us as mentors and coaches and speakers. Nobody cares about what you have to say until they first know you care about them. And the only way you can learn to care about somebody, and I have a definition for care, is to sit there and be a good listener and learn and hear their story. And care for me stands for commit all resources and energy. If you truly care about somebody or something, that means you are willing and are going to commit all resources and energy to that person, that relationship, that value, your faith. And what is Scripture? It is the story of creation and God's divinity and mind, body, and soul in the person of Jesus Christ in this world. And we learn that, which is why we're so intent on referring back to Scripture when we talk about how we should behave.
Exactly.
And so this is going to, because we have no prepared questions on my show. What would be your, how do I put this? What's your greatest success story of seeing that aha moment when you have been counseling or mentoring or helping an organization build bridges and get through reconciliation and healing? What's one of your best stories of success? Because I'm going to ask you, well, yeah, and then what's the one where you went, oh man, that did not work out the way we wanted? But what's your best one?
Okay, I'll start with the positive. So the positive one, it was during COVID. And if you remember during COVID, that's when my Bible study really took off. Because I actually wrote this Bible study during the Michael Brown situation in St. Louis. If you remember that, when he was shooting in St. Louis and Ferguson. And actually, my congregation in Missouri was like right down the street from that community in Ferguson. So I knew that congregation. I knew that town. I used to drive through it to get to my church on a regular basis. So even though I wasn't in Missouri, I knew that was not the story that was being told about Ferguson was not accurate. Those were not the people of Ferguson that caused all that chaos. So I wrote a Bible study because they say, hey, we need something for the church, a Bible study that will help the church deal with race. I wrote it after 2016 to address some of those issues. It kind of sat there because nobody was really ready to talk about it yet. Then COVID hit and the George Floyd thing happened. And we're all sitting at home watching the George Floyd thing. We're watching Minneapolis burn. We're watching cities go on fire. We're watching people just really upset. And all of a sudden now the church goes, we really got to deal with the race problem. Do we have any resources to deal with that? And so my book, Bible study, became something that my church body said, hey, we got to get a hand on this. We got to do this. We should study this. We should read it. So I got invited to a lot of congregations to just talk about the Bible study and preach about it. So I go to one church in Nebraska, and it was an area in Nebraska near Lincoln, actually, that had history. Lincoln was as a community has a lot of racial tension in Lincoln, Nebraska. And so they say, hey, can you come in and talk to our congregation, preach and then lead a Bible study discussion? And there was a little old white lady who came up to me after my presentation. She says, I was ready to hate you. But after your presentation, I really just want to thank you for coming out, and I'm so glad you came.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Because she was ready. She was ready for me to sit there and tell her, like everything else she's seen on television, that white people are all racist. You need to change. There's something wrong with you. You need to do this. You need to do that. You need to stop doing that. She was ready to be attacked for being white. And when I came in and talked about how we heal, how we listen, who the real enemy is in race, it's not the person who's different from you, but it's Satan. And Satan is driving the racial discrimination in our country, not the person that you're angry with. It broke down the walls for her, and she was able to hear the presentation and learn from it. Wow.
That and the flip side of that coin was Dayton, Ohio had a lot of racial issues, and we actually brought in, as a police department, we brought in facilitators from the Civil Rights Division of the Federal Department of Justice to facilitate. I think it was either a 9 or 12 week process where command staff, which I was a part of, and then representatives from the African American community, including faith-based and business and just community activist leaders and stuff. And that we had to do that. It was literally, that was the ground rules. Each side, we're gonna put out a topic, and we met once a week for, it was like 3 hours. But we also had a meal together as a part of that each time, and nothing fancy, catered sandwiches and stuff like that. And we had that foundational guideline, or rails, if you will. This is not an argument. This is going to be a conversation, and you law enforcement, you have to sit there and quietly and patiently listen to the perspective of the community. And then to the community, the flip side was you need to sit there and patiently and quietly listen to the perspective of law enforcement so you could get the process of not agreeing with everything that's being said, maybe even flat out disagreeing, but at a minimum appreciate the perspective that somebody that and it wasn't just that thinks differently or looks differently than you. We had African American command staff that were sitting in uniform. But the flip side to that, you didn't see that coming. For the older white lady at your thing, I got invited to an all black church, and the bishop, Mark McGuire, not the baseball player, but that who actually I wasn't involved in a specific case that sent him to federal prison for drug trafficking, but my beat and district included where McGuire was slinging dope back in the day. But anyway, he comes out and he's a bishop in the AME, AMC, AME, and he invites me to come in full dress blues and preach at a Sunday service. And I'm thinking, man, do I need to wear a vest? And because I'm sitting in the front row and I get invited up, but I got that same kind of response afterwards from a number of the people that were there, and there was several hundred people there, came up afterwards and go, man, I thought you were going to be a racist POS, kind of thing. That they couldn't believe that, a white. Well, I wasn't skinny, but I didn't weigh then what I weigh now. Cop in full dress uniform could actually be a born again Christian. It's like you're the white Satan kind of deal.
Right.
And come up afterwards and shake hands and go, hey, I now have a greater appreciation for the Dayton Police Department. And then shortly, not long after that, we had a in-custody death of a 19-year-old black male. And because of what we'd gone through with the Civil Rights Unit, we had pastors in the African-American community getting on TV going, stand down and wait till all the facts come in. And so we didn't have any riots kind of deal. And so we hadn't reached full reconciliation or unity, but we had certainly gotten to a point of détente in a way, and at least the lines, like you said, communication.
Yeah.
So it's exciting to hear that, that it's very doable in so many different ways. And I want to kind of jump out of, it's not just about race, because even in the introduction that we're increasingly divided by race, culture, and ideology. And then I've even thrown in, I didn't put it in the introduction, but even faith. Now, I mean, look at the division between, the Muslim religion and Christianity and Judaism and you throw it just in our whole thing. It goes way beyond race. How has your experience been that with respect to ideology and faith being an obstacle to building bridges? And I don't know if the question is clear or not. But
No, it is clear. I think the key for that, it goes back again to our initial part of the conversation. We're very divided by a lot of things, and faith can be divisive in terms of, as a Christian, we know that we stand on the truth of Christ, Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior. If you disagree with that, we're going to be in conflict because of the fact that the truth is what the truth is. So yes, that will create division. I've discovered, even working across denominational lines with just meeting people, there's still a sense of people just want to live in peace, typically. And if we can find a way, and I just wrote an article for my blog on, can we get back to the natural law of trying to figure out the common good? Can we, if we start there with our conversation? My wife and I were talking about this, and she's like, "That's never going to happen." and I get what she was saying, but if I could just look at my neighbor across from me and say, I want what's best for you, regardless of your faith and your political background, but I just want you to be safe and to be able to prosper. And I care about you as a human being, getting back to the very natural law, the law that God placed on every man's heart. If we can get to a point we can agree on that, that's probably the starting point. We may never agree on our theology. I mean, even in my own church, by the way, we don't agree on all of our theology. In terms of we disagree on practice, not necessarily theology, but on practice. So, but if we can agree on the virtue of caring for our neighbor and start there, that's probably where we can best find some agreement and some cohesiveness at that point.
Yeah. You just touched, I wrote another note. And two of my favorite authors who came out of law enforcement are Chris Voss and Robin Dreeke. And Chris, top international hostage negotiator for the FBI, and Robin Dreeke, top international counterterrorism back mostly during the Cold War era and Russia. And they both, they said four things. Two of them you mentioned, that the commonality that we all have, no matter what it is, whether you're a terrorist, a hostage taker, or a 2-year-old, we all want the same four things: safety, security, prosperity, and control. I mean, that's what we want in our lives, and that's the natural law you're talking about. That's the commonality that we all have. We just have different ways of dealing with those four categories if we perceive it's being attacked, or not, maybe not necessarily attacked, but not being recognized and acknowledged, and then that's where we get this conflict going. And the first thought that came to me is when you said, differences in theology and putting into practice. Exhibit A, Judas. The dude was a disciple of Jesus Christ for 3 years. Was there? He was sent out with the other disciples, later apostles, whatever, however you want to phrase them, and given the gifts of healing and discernment and all these things and performing miracles. Nowhere in the Bible does it say when he sent the 12 out, 11 of them came back with great stories. But that Judas, man, he was a total failure. Nobody said that. And we did an episode on this with a friend of mine, is at some point in time when you have those outliers in that are the destructive, the toxic, the I hate everybody, I hate everything, and you're like, okay, I'm never going to win them over, and what do I do with them? and the title of that episode was "Let Judas Walk." At some point in time, you can't beat yourself to death trying to convince that one person that is like, okay, they are a very hateful person, and they are not going to change. And I can pray for them, but you know what? Christ didn't stop Judas. He knew what he was going to do. He let Judas walk. So, have you had? This is a weird question. Have you had any of those Judas moments of people that you're trying to do the best for, and you're just wondering, like, where are you? Where's your mind at?
I have actually. I had a interview at a congregation. They brought me in because they were thinking about calling me as their pastor. And so what they did was they wanted me to come and do kind of a trial sermon. It was kind of unusual in our church. We don't typically do that. But I did. And I preached. And afterwards, we had a meeting with all the people in Bible class. We could ask me questions. And one of the members just stood up and said, it was everything was going great. People, we were getting along. I liked them. They liked me. Most of them did. And this one man got up and he says, we had a men's Bible study last week, and we talked about this, about you possibly coming, and we decided that we're just not ready for a Negro pastor.
Hey, at least he was honest.
He was, but you could visibly hear, audibly hear the gasp that went through this crowd, and they're like, "Oh, no, we don't feel this way." And the bad thing about it was a pastor's dad who said that.
Oh my goodness.
And so the entire meeting just imploded, and it just blew up. And what was interesting about it was I took my two kids along with me, my third oldest son and my youngest daughter, because we were traveling together through to this particular church. We were going somewhere else, and they had never really experienced racism before. Oh. And so that was their first taste of what it was like. And they were like, "Dad, I had no idea." And so we were able to process it, but it was kind of like, and I wasn't mad at the person. I mean, he grew up at a different time and a different age. He did express his true opinion. When the offer or the call from that congregation came, I declined it. And it wasn't because of that meeting. And I had to make sure the congregation knew I wasn't saying no because of this meeting or because of this particular guy. It just wasn't a great fit for me. But I wanted to make sure they knew that I didn't want this to blow up their church, because that could have. If I wrote back and said, "I'm declining this because this guy said this ridiculously racist comment," that whole church could have blown up.
Yeah.
So you have to learn sometimes to be able to, like you just said, to look what's the common good for not only yourself but the community at large. And so when you talked about why do some people ignore the common good, because they're not really thinking about the common good for their neighbor. They're thinking about it for themselves. Because if I'm really concerned about my neighbor's common good as well as my own, then I'm not going to do things that ignore his benefit as well. And so the example you gave to me says to me that you may think you want the common good for everybody in the community as long as they agree with you. That's not the common good.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you have to re-examine your own motives. If you think the common good means that your neighbor has to be like you, has to accept the things you accept, has to live the way you live, that's not what the virtue of the common good is. That is me wanting what's best for you, even if we disagree theologically, ideologically, if we disagree philosophically, if we vote differently, I still want what's best for you. I still want your kids to go to the best school in this community. I still want you to have the right food in the grocery store that you need. If you are a Muslim, that the local grocery store has the kind of produce that go along with your religion. Not because I want to change you and to be a Christian. I love you to be a Christian. Don't get me wrong. But common good says you need this kind of these supplies, this to live the kind of life that you want to live. let me help you do that because I care about you as an individual, not you as a possible convert.
Right. And that perspective, you could be an atheist and still have that perspective of what I want, that what is good for you, the good of the community. I what are your thoughts on that? This probably, I don't know. I'm just going to ask it. You, and I don't know in the Lutheran Church if you guys the Lord's Prayer, the Our Father,
Hmm.
is that within the Lutheran
Yeah.
Church? Yeah. And how's that thing go? Because Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. And so often, and is what, God, I want your will as long as it matches what I want.
Right.
And so how do we get people to I just read it was the writings from, it's like 1666 is when it was thereabouts it was written. Brother Lawrence is the name of the book, and it's only like 39 pages, and it's four convers no four conversations and 14 letters from Brother Lawrence to whoever the recipient is. They never specifically identify him in the writings, but I just can't remember who it was. They were all to the same person, and it's called It's about the presence of God, and that how do we get to the point where we, in our human condition, genuinely recognize the presence of God in every aspect of our life, so that we can therefore see, hear, and know what is God's will for you individually, for your community, all those things, as opposed to, hey, it's just a really good sentence in a prayer, but I have no idea what it means.
When I work with churches to try to figure that out, because I do a lot of that, my goal is, it's like God gives you clues. He tells you very clearly about the needs around you, about the hurts around you, and he gives you a what I call a holy discontent, that you're not happy with the way things are around you, but you have a sense outside of yourself that goes, I really need to step in and do something. Like when I used to drive through my old neighborhood in St. Louis, or even here in Fort Dodge in Little Chicago. There are parts of Little Chicago here that are very, very nice, very pristine, lovely people. But there are also parts in my neighborhood around here, or in this community, where you see dilapidated houses, where you see people who are poor, who are struggling. My heart, we should be moved to compassion to go, it shouldn't be that this poor person here whose house looks like that. How can we as a community help that person? I don't need God to show me that we should look at the people that are struggling in the lower parts of our community and go, how do we make sure that they have what they need? There's no grocery store near here. What can we do to help people? My son and I, who is 14, one of the things we love to do is we love to do Meals on Wheels.
Mm.
And I take him with me because he likes to go and deliver the meals to the little old ladies, and he says, and they tell me how nice and handsome I am, Dad. I don't, I don't think you do it because they tell you how handsome you are. I think you do it because you love to be able to know that you've done something to help someone in need.
Yeah.
And we love to do that because we've actually been able to take these meals to the elderly people and say, here, this is someone we can help to kind of reflect the light of God and light of Christ in the work that we do.
Yeah. And that, I don't know if you, or well, you would have been old enough, but I don't know if you would remember when Mother Teresa of Calcutta, now Saint Teresa of Calcutta in the Catholic faith, spoke before the UN, the United Nations, and and if I recall correctly, this is from that speech, but she puts into perspective what you're saying, and I'm going to paraphrase it the best I can. we may not all be able to do great things in our lifetime, but we can do little things with great love.
Mm.
And so that people, I think sometimes they hear the call to service, they hear the admonition to live with compassion, and they go, dude, I just don't have the bandwidth to do that. I don't have the skills. I don't have the time. I don't have the money. I don't know what to do that's going to make a difference. And I get that. I also tell people there's two things really, really key in the Bible, one of which I do not want to experience. I do not want to have a Saul moment in my life where I have pissed God off so badly that he's got to knock me off a horse, literally, and kind of deal. Although it never says in the Bible a horse, but that's how the story goes. And then was blinded. You know what? If he wants to show me clues and stuff, I hope they're really clear, because I don't want to get hit upside the head by God, and then have that experience. The other one is the experience I do want to have is the confidence and the faith that the apostles, 12 people, well, after they replaced Judas, 12 men, what 12 men did 2,000 years ago, and 11 of them, as far as we know, were martyred. They were killed for their faith, and John was not. Historically, that's what we believe. He wasn't martyred. What those 12 guys did, now 2,000 and plus years later, what a difference 12 people made. So I want to aspire to not being that person that goes, hey, I'm just one guy, what can I do? And
Right.
and so what, in your Bible study, is that something people can get online? I mean, is it out there?
Yeah, it's at Concordia Publishing House, and they can look it up as One Nation Under God: Healing Racial Divides. And the neat thing about it is, when you pay for it, you get it right away as a downloadable resource that they can replicate and use in their congregations and have it immediately. So you have access to it right away.
Well, even an individual can just go, hey, look at I'm I'm not a churchy person.
Mhm.
I don't belong to a domination, but I'm a denomination, not abomination. I I don't go to church, or what we call fallen away Catholics, and and they have whatever their excuses are for not coming back to the church and whatnot. But an individual can just go online and order that personally and go, hey, I just want this book and it's a workbook Bible study kind of deal. It's not,
Right.
it's
So
not
there's two parts to it. You get the whole Bible study. There is a leader guide, and then there's just kind of a study portion of it as well. So if you just want to go through the leader guide part, there's more in depth, more behind the scenes kind of to help you teach it if you want to teach it or lead it. Yeah, it's at concordiapublishinghouse.com.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. Man, I was taking so many notes here.
Yeah.
One of the things and this seems to be a recurring theme for the last 16, 17 months that we've had this podcast is, and Ryan Holiday wrote a book by this name. It's called Ego is the Enemy. How do you, in a polite way, whether you're a Christian or not, the Irish in me would want to say to somebody, get your head out of and then fill in the blank.
Right.
How do you graciously share with somebody, park your ego at the door, you're the problem, not the people you're bitching about, and you're never going to make a difference in life if you are that self-centered? How do you have that conversation?
That's tough because I think we do tend to we we always said down south we tend to think our stuff doesn't stink.
Yeah.
But I always remind people that before the cross, we all have the same position on our knees. And in order for you to really be able to be a blessing to people, you have to remember who you're comparing yourself to. You're not comparing yourself to the guy standing next to you or the gal sitting next to you. You're comparing yourself to God. And if you're comparing your righteousness to God's holiness, you will always be reminded of your place in this world, as a poor, miserable sinner, as we say every single Sunday in our liturgy. We say that to the point where our members get tired of hearing, "I am a poor, miserable sinner," because we need to be reminded that we're a poor, miserable sinner. So I don't get full of myself, puffed up, as Paul would say.
Mm-hmm.
I love the when Paul's talking, he's confronting Peter in Galatians, and he says, "For those seeming to be pillars, those who think they're foundational, it's like God does not judge the outward appearance of a man; He judges the heart." If we remember that God's looking at our heart, and if we're honest with ourselves, our heart has a lot of flaws in it and is broken and needs to be forgiven. And the person across from us also is someone who Christ has redeemed, and we're all in the same spot. We're all, somebody once said, we're all beggars telling another beggar where to find the bread. So if we remember that, I think we're in good shape.
Yeah, and so I'm reminded of the Beatitudes and some other. There's so much direction in Scripture that are that map and that the guidepost and the skill sets and resources. You will never in your human existence be perfect, but you can aspire to being a saint. And saints aren't perfect. I mean, I every day I have an app on my phone. It's called Laudate. It's a Catholic app. Every day there's a list of saints of the day, and I'm reading them, and I'm like, ooh, man, Saint Francis of Assisi was a hard case, man. It took his mom 30 years of praying for him to get his mind right, or other saints. Even Saint Teresa of Calcutta, if you read about her, the doubts and shortcomings that she saw in herself, but she still lived by the greatest commandment: love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your soul, and with all your strength. If you do that, even though you will fail at times, you are on the right path, because that's what God has commanded us to do, and He has given us. Jeremiah, I knew you before you were formed in your mother's womb. I consecrated you before you were born. We are not an accidental creation of God. It was done with great purpose, for His glory. His will be done on earth. And I think that's one of the things that folks like you, we need to spend more time and paying attention to and learning from, because it's not impossible. It, as we would say on the street, like you were talking about the King's English. I spent 13 years on midnights in a 99% African American districts and beats. I learned how to speak in a way that I could communicate with folks. And one of the things is, we, not on the streets there, what I'm trying to say is, what I just said about it is doable gets translated into this SHIT is real, and it's lived experience. And we need folks like you to step up in their own communities and in their own lives, and not be Kermit the Frog sipping the Lipton tea and the meme going, "It's none of my business." Step out there and get in the arena, and take Christ's admonition to the apostles after the resurrection. It was, do not worry about what to say, because I'm sending you an advocate, the Holy Spirit. So do not be afraid. How many times is that in the Bible, in the
Right.
New Testament? And I think that's what we need is hearing people like you share the message of don't hide in fear, and be a build bridger instead of the person holding the grenade and the pin's been pulled.
That's right, exactly.
Man, so how can people reach out to you directly?
Well, there are several ways. The best way to connect with most of the things that I do is on my podcast. I mean, my website, becomingbridgebuilders.org. There you'll find my podcast, Becoming Bridge Builders. You'll find my blogs. You'll find a link to my new book, Guided by Grace. If they want to follow my podcast, I have three. Becoming Bridge Builders is the main one. Trailblazer and Titans is one for entrepreneurs. I love talking to them about their story and their journey. And I just started a new one for church leaders called the Leadership Bridge. It's a 5-minute, once a week podcast where I take one leadership tool and I pour into it, give them a daily brick for the day, and lay out some. So today we talked about how do you lead a tired team. And so I gave them kind of a 3 energy quiz to kind of take your team through. Because sometimes leaders we just talked about, John Maxwell. I was so influenced by John Maxwell, and I loved his Enjoy Life Club. I still got those.
Oh yeah.
And he would take that, and I would listen to him pour into you for an hour. And I know people a day don't typically have an hour, so I thought if I could give them a 5-minute leadership nugget. So
Yeah.
that was a goal of the Leadership Bridge: give you a 5-minute leadership nugget that you could take and apply during the week.
Awesome. And do me a favor, because I didn't write that fast. Shoot me a message with all 3 podcasts.
Oh, sure.
And I'll get that in the notes. And any final last kind of like you're like, oh man, I wish Pat would have asked me this question, but he didn't. Is there something you want to share that I glossed over, or I missed an opportunity to share? Fire away.
It's not something that you missed, but it's something you said I wanted to kind of hone in on a little bit more. When we talk about the story you shared about, when that young man died in police custody, and how the community did not riot. I think there is something deeper there that we miss as to why we don't have more of that in our culture. The reason they didn't riot is because you had taken the time as a police force to build relationships in that community, and they trusted you. They knew that you had their best interest at heart. They knew that you were invested in them. If we want our society to, I would say, calm down, be more have more reconciliation, we need to invest in those relationships, those conversations with people. So when you say something stupid, and you will, if you're with somebody across the table, a different background, different race, and you ask a really dumb question that may be racist, and they know you didn't mean it because they know your heart. And they learned your heart because you've spent time with them, you've cried with them, you listened to their stories, you've been there for them in the good times and the bad times. When you have those kind of relationships, you have the permission to say stupid things. And I think that's where we don't have right now. We don't have permission to say stupid things because no one trusts anybody anymore. They always assume the worst.
Yeah. I love how you create visual pictures for me in what you're sharing. I leap to, not only do I have permission to say stupid things, I also know that you have the grace as the listener to forgive me. Right. And if you don't have trust, you're not going to have that grace and that forgiveness with someone who you intentionally or unintentionally, offend. And so that's that. What a great insight that to be able to have the freedom to, and not the fear. I don't want to say that you have permission to say stupid things on purpose, but that when you say or do something that the intent was not to be harmful or anything like that. It was just like stupid.
Right.
That you have that confidence in knowing because I have a relationship with that audience, whatever that is, in the employment with your employees, or your family, your own kids, or your neighbors, or whatever, is that there's that grace, and I know, even if I don't ask for forgiveness, which I probably should, I know you will forgive me for doing something stupid and not hold it against me.
Right.
That's a great nugget of truth. It's like Christ. Again, man, my brain's just flying. The woman at the well.
Yes.
Or the prostitute that they're getting ready to stone, and he is writing in whatever in the dirt. I'd love to know what he wrote. And he didn't lecture the woman at the well. He didn't lecture the prostitute that's about to be stoned to death. He told the prostitute one simple thing: sin no more. And he didn't even get to say anything to the lady at the well, other than told her about her whole life and 5 husbands or whatever. She dropped everything and ran back and brought the whole Samaritan town to hear his truth, because she believed and trusted him.
Right.
So that's those. It's, man, I'm excited. This is a great conversation. All right. So any other things you wanted to add before we wrap up and sign off?
Well, Pat, just thank you for inviting me on. I'm so glad we finally connected. It was definitely worth the conversation. So thank you for having me on.
Well, thank you for your patience, for my ineptness in when it comes to technology. For our audience, man, I hope you walk away with such inspiration, and reach out to Keith and check out his Bible study, and keep being out there, doing the right things at the right time, the right way, and for the right reasons, because that's what warriors and servants and leaders do every day, every time. And it's because of your commitment and loyalty to growing in your own journey that we're now honored to be in 75 countries and Hong Kong, and still growing. So thank you for sharing this message with folks that need to hear it today. Until we see you again next week. Again, I close every episode. I've already said it, but I'm going to close it again and say it over, is always, always, always strive to do the right thing at the right time, the right way, and for the right reasons, because that's what warrior servants and leaders do every day, every time. Love you all, and see you next week.